know it's controversial anymore, but Jordan Peterson says something that I think is very interesting, which is that most people, if we, if I, if you, if most of us were born into Nazi Germany, they would be Nazis.
All right, here we are. What a week, man.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Anything exciting happening in your life?
I evacuated my home.
Yeah. So I just want to set this up. I think that this is going to be a heavier discussion in light of events that have happened. We're going to start by telling you our personal experience because we live in a hot spot. And then we could talk about the meta issues that are going on in America and the world right now.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Sure. So yeah, my experience so far, and I will preface by saying I think most of the people protesting are peaceful, and I actually think the people that were in our area weren't particularly concerned with the protests at all.
Yeah.
I think it was an opportunistic thing. But my experience was the neighborhood, every restaurant around us was broken into, and the money was stolen. The stores, the jewelry stores, the clothing stores, broken into, and then fires were started.
Yeah.
So I fled. Yeah. I fled my apartment amidst fire trucks, and there weren't police here, which was, I know that most people would be happy about that, but I was scared.
Yeah.
As, you know, there was a crowd of 30 people looting basically out front of my door.
More than 30, man.
Such that I...
More than 30.
No, I'm saying out, literally,
Yeah.
you, like, I couldn't walk out my door without seeing 30 looters.
Yeah.
Which made me scared to leave my door.
Yeah.
So I drove out the back instead. It was crazy. It's the first time in my life that I wish I had a gun.
Dude,
I was truly scared that once someone unlocked our front door to leave, that was it for our building.
Yeah.
You know?
So
and then obviously the fires started, and I was like, oh, they don't even have to do that. This might be for our building.
So if you guys watched the footage of LA, you saw where I live. I'm not going to dox myself further than that, but you had a direct view of where I live because it wasn't near it. It was where this stuff happened. I didn't realize it to this morning. I finally had, because I slept out for a night and then I spent the whole day. Like, it was not, I didn't feel safe coming back. Right now we have National Guard at the end. It's more empty than coronavirus right now.
Yeah.
Thank God. I'm happy that it's empty. But I didn't recognize till this morning when I sat down, took deep breaths and did a meditation how terrified I was. I had repressed how fucking scared I was.
Oh, I could sense it in you.
Yeah. And yeah, man, it was the first time in my life, because I hate them, that I wanted a gun. I was like, I called you. I was like, do you want to come down here with a fucking like butter knife and like wait at the door for people to come in? Because I didn't even know how we were gonna get out. But luckily, everything turned out fine. Our apartments were not looted. We are safe. We are sound. I had a chance to decompress. I realized how scared that experience had made me, and how, you know, in the moment, for one, you have to just function, but also, like, I'm not proud to be scared. You know, that was the other emotional insight that I had of this. Like, I got away, and then I turned on the news, and it was I think that a lot of people are struggling, because we spoke to Justin, who's our producer, and he was at one of the protests, and I asked him, what was your experience? And he said, I think that the news overblew it. I think that the media is biased. I think that they were showing, and correct me if any of this isn't, like, that they were making it out to be more violent than it was. Is that a fair summary of what you felt?
Yeah, just from my anecdotal experience.
Yeah, yep, 100%.
Which we're not invalidating.
No.
And your experience was, it was peaceful and the news is making it look bad.
Yeah.
My experience when people were posting peaceful stuff was, that's not what it looked like at all. When you came back to the apartment the next day, there was shattered glass and trash everywhere.
Yeah, I saw the Santa Monica footage, and it looked...
So without too much of I think one of the things that's going on is people have, one, if you live here, you have very different experiences. You were a few miles away from me with a completely different experience. You could have been a few blocks away from me with a completely different experience.
Can I hop in?
Yeah.
And I actually think nobody is capable of having an unbiased opinion, whether you live here in a dangerous area, here in a peaceful area, or you're in a place with none of this watching the news. I haven't seen anything where someone tried to truly track percentage of the city, percentage of the city that had peaceful protests, percentage of the city that was violently burned. You know, like, none of us know. None of us really know. And none of us know how many people were hurt by police. None of us know how many people were hurt by looters or rioters or whatever you want to call them. So we're all going off of a complete lack of information from either our own experience or what we see in the news.
And so something that I felt, and I've since disentangled, and literally we've never done this. We spoke for about an hour and a half prior. So I was like, Justin, I need to talk to someone who wasn't here because you had the same firsthand experience. What I've just started to disentangle is that when I got out of here, I mean, we evacuated. I don't want to say that. Dude, I don't want to over or undersell this.
I got out of here. I got on the highway and was just like, see you later.
When I got to a TV and I heard them say largely peaceful protest, I was like, fucking turn this channel. I was so fearful and angry. And I wanted confirmation of my experience, which maybe wasn't representative. I don't know, but I wasn't interested in representative explanations. And I think what happens is, based on either personal experience or whatever political party you have, you are looking for confirmation in these sort of things that validate your experience. And I know that I was like, fuck you. My neighborhood doesn't exist. There's nothing that is open today. The food market was ransacked. I can't get food. And to be clear, I'm so lucky. Everything is wonderful.
Corona, though, I have a lot of soup.
Yeah. I have a ton of soup. And I don't mean this as a complaint at all, because even throughout all this, I'm like, I'm so fortunate. Like, I have a place to go. I had a bed to sleep in. It was great. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm super fucking lucky for 100 different reasons. But I see how this division happens. And then I see how your own internal psychology
draws you towards what you want to see.
I did not want to hear the other side. I needed at least 24 to 48 hours before I could take a breath and be like, okay, let's assume that these people aren't awful. And explore further. So I think that that's a dynamic that is at play across the board, and I felt it firsthand.
For sure. Yeah, I see it on Reddit. Depending on where you go on Reddit, you can find a ton of people. You can find female store owners being beaten with 2x4s.
Yep.
You can find police who are unprompted firing off tear gas. And it's literally just, what subreddit are you voluntarily going to go to?
Yep.
That's absolutely going to be what you see. And then that's going to inform your belief.
Yeah, so there's 100 different angles to talk about this. I want to talk about the emotional angle of what happened on a scale. I want to talk about the legal and racial angle. I want to talk about the macroeconomic geopolitical angle. I think these are all really interesting. But let's start close to the ground level. Sure. I think. Do you want to do emotions or like legal first?
I don't have much more emotional to
share. I mean emotion, the collective emotions. What was happening out there? Let's start with legal.
Here or in LA?
Let's start with legal. Okay. I think this is easier. I called up my buddy because I wanted different opinions, who was because I was upset, and I called up my buddy who is a lawyer, and he works, I don't know what it's called, but he takes cases that are traditionally like underprivileged communities who got kind of railroaded in the legal system and tries to get them off.
An appeal court.
An appeal court.
An appeal court.
Yeah.
So federal appeals. So when somebody is convicted, loses their trial, the appeal will go to him, and his job is to see if he can help the person to be exonerated from their crime.
And so his firsthand experience is a lot of horror stories of like, oh my God, how did you get this 25-year sentence for like being near a crime? Like that kind of stuff. And I asked him, I was like, tell me, what's going on? He says, a lot of the people are Black or Latin. Like so many of them are, almost all. I said, what is the determinant factor in the outcomes that people get? And he took the longest pause of anyone else said. He said, economics. He said, every single, I've worked with white people, I've worked with Latin people, I've worked with Black people, but every single to a T person I've worked with is poor. They did not have quality legal representation. They got the book thrown at them and an example made of them, and sometimes we can get them off, but appeals are really hard. Because it's not just like beyond a reasonable doubt. It's like you have to have a preponderance or whatever of evidence. So I spoke to him about that, and then I tried to understand what happened here. And I think that there's obviously, Black Lives Matter's in the street. There's a racial thing going on. George Floyd died. That obviously kicked it off. But when I zoom out and I go, why today? Is it because this is the first time that we have footage of a white police officer killing a Black man? It's not. Right? This happened in New York with the guy who was selling Lucy's. And while there were protests, and there might have been this is all over America. So I go, okay, why today? And I think the best answer for why today is that it's similar to like why World War I started, which is, yes, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated. but there was all of this stuff that was ready to burst. And I think that is the more long-term impactful story of what's going to happen. And as I look at this, we've had coronavirus shutting everyone down. Economics have gotten even worse. We've had a rise in inequality over the last 50 years. You've got these mounting stories of police brutality and a widening gap between what is perceived as the apparatus that protects the elites, who are not all white, but maybe predominantly white, and the apparatus that holds down the proletariat, which are various colors, but are predominantly colored. And I think that all of that set the stage such that when there was a spark, it was like the brush fire just exploded.
Yeah. Well, also, in my opinion, the protesters and the looters or rioters don't necessarily have a lot of overlap even. Like, there were people who were caught and arrested for looting, and when they asked them, why are you doing this? What cause are you trying to promote? At least those people will say, oh, it was mostly just to get money. And I think the people who are protesting probably aren't doing it by breaking into stores and stealing stuff. They're doing it by going out with signs and getting in front of police or getting in front of government buildings. Yeah. So I don't even think it's necessarily the same groups. So I think it's just a group of people who feel economically, that it's not fair, that the system's not fair, that they have less than they should, and this is an opportunity for them to go and equalize that.
And the question, which I think the answer which we discovered, or if you disagree, let us know in the comments, why so many of them now? Like, if this had happened in Sweden, a huge portion of the population has too much to lose to go in and smash into a Nike store and take some stuff to try to resell it. It's just not worthwhile. Why does the calculus work out in the favor of, this is a worthwhile thing to do for so many people? I think that this is the brush that has been laid for a long period of time. So do you want to talk emotions or macro at this point? Because I wrote a little bit about emotions.
The emotions of the people here?
So I think the sort of the what you can expect in terms of, will there be a backlash? Was this effective? All that kind of stuff.
Well, there was no chanting in our area. Like, I really, at the risk of repeating myself, like, people were not...
In our area, it was looting.
People were not protesting. So the emotion here, it might have been anger, but it wasn't pointed at the police or the government. It was pointed at the world. You know what I mean? The victims were the businesses around, most of which aren't big corporations, by the way. Like, it was a lot of just regular businesses. So in terms of the emotions of the people who were doing the looting, I think there is anger there, but I think the people that were more focused on George Floyd were at the
different
various
places,
Black Lives Matters organized rallies, of which there were multiple for you to go to if that was your particular issue of choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's fair to blame those people for what the looters were doing, but I also don't think it's fair to excuse what the looters did by saying that that's their cause. You know what I mean? So the emotion here, I don't know.
There was opportunism. There was a lot.
Opportunism.
And so the anger was directed in a number of directions, right? It was directed towards, and there was some opportunism towards the storefronts, right? There was this sense of like, I'm angry, and I saw some interviews, which I don't know if they were true, but a sense that it's not fair that this rich owner, and of course that's not true of many of the stores that got smashed, but that this rich person has so much. There's anger at the police force for, it's not true that this police force has gone on with impunity. And one thing that my friend Paul said, which I think makes a ton of sense to me, is that if you ever have a group of people that have more power than another and limited accountability to them, meaning he's like, one of the most fucked up things is when you file a complaint with the police force, it goes to the police force nine times out of 10. It's like, you can't, like, that's not going to be effective. You need to have more, and there is some, but you need to have more independent review of these kinds of complaints. I think one of the most easy things, and I'm sad that they're asking for a defunding of the police force, because what I think they need is every officer needs a 24-hour body cam. And if that body cam footage is for any reason, in any matter of review, not available, didn't work, that precinct should lose so much freaking money, such that they are incentivized to make sure, even at the expense of their own, that the body cam footage is there and can be reviewed. I think that would be a massive ability to have accountability and better outcomes in the justice system.
Yeah, to have a huge penalty if body cam footage
Just a huge
isn't
penalty.
available to the public.
Yeah. But in terms of the emotion, yeah, I think there's a couple things that are happening right now. So you've seen this outpouring of frustration and anger. And what I've seen in my circle is more people than I knew or thought cared all of a sudden caring. And I've spoken to a lot of them. And so you said, you're like, I've been to a lot of protests, which is actually a rare thing. The people that I spoke to, this is their first protest. They didn't really care. They weren't part of the thing. And I asked, and as I dug into it, what I saw was, this is the problem, I think, very little understanding and a lot of compliance for various reasons. So I spoke secondhand to one person who shared the blackout photo, who doesn't post on Instagram, doesn't participate in these things. And after multiple, again, secondhand, because this is a friend of someone's, I was like, ask them this, ask them this, ask them this. They were sending back what they had said. What it got down to was I felt social pressure to do it. And so you are getting a show of support that lacks understanding. I saw, and I know someone who showed up to a protest, and I just know this individual does not care at all. This individual will say that they care, but this individual in their own life has so many ethical lapses. You know what I mean? So many things that if they care to do the right thing, it's like, it's to the people that you're cheating in your own life is who you would fix things with.
This is...
you know who I'm talking about. Enough said.
It's my first instinct?
Yeah, it's your first instinct. That they went to a protest and they Instagrammed it. Again, I think you're getting compliance without understanding. And as I walked the streets of Santa Monica and I saw all the boarded up things, again, I think that there's an anger, and I felt it, a frustration and a rage. Like, my neighborhood just got smashed. Now, I'm not trying to win any Olympics and say this is worse than anybody else's life, but I promise you that creates anger in people. And it is not, you're not seeing a ton of it, at least on my social media. And so unfortunately, I'm not saying that these have been a bad idea to protest, but there's going to be a back and a forth. And I think the only answer is not to beat the other side into submission. It is understanding. So the best videos that I saw when I was like, how does this get fixed, were when people marched to the police station, held hands, and cried. Like, the understanding, I think, is the only way that it happens. And when I hear people say things like, fuck the police, fuck 12, it's written all over our neighborhood and every graffiti everywhere. It is the same group of you're all the same that is being resisted. And it's a natural instinct when you feel harmed to harm in the same exact way that you've been harmed. And what is so difficult to do is to, I think, start by understanding the way that you feel upset and then try to go feel someone else's.
It's also not most people, just to make that clear, though. You know what I mean? Like, I think most humans on all sides of the political spectrum would agree that most police are trying to do a good job and most of the protesters were nonviolent. You know what I mean? So I don't think that the majority of any group is lashing out violently.
Can I offer a something that I felt?
Sure.
So we have multiple personalities, all of us, right? We have the way we are with our friends or family or this, and we have a roughly 3-part brain. We have the neocortex, we have the this, and we have the limbic brain. I think what you're getting is a lot of politeness from people right now. And people will say, oh, no, I get it. The police aren't bad. Or I get it. Black people aren't bad. Or I get it. This group of people isn't bad. I think that is a social mask. And we have been conditioned and learned in the same way that you can't say these words, in the same way that you tell a child, say you're sorry or say thank you. And what you are not doing with that child is creating actual contrition or understanding or gratitude. What you have gotten is a lot of socially convenient phrases. But if people sat down, and I felt it, man. I sat down in my bed, I cried for a while, and then I felt furious, and I cried. Like, people are fucking angry, man. And they're angry in an unjustified, irrational way, because that's how emotions arise. Now, when we feel these, this is emotional mastery, by the way, this is a little plug. When we feel these unjustified emotions, but we know that they're not justified, what we do before we speak them, we wrap them in this nuanced, I know it's not all police officers, but what we feel is a murderous rage towards everyone on the other side. That is human. The way to deal with it is not to be polite. the way to deal with it is to feel it, one, yourself, and then dialogue and express and then hold hands and cry and rage at one another without punching each other, you know? And I don't know how much that happened. To the degree to which understanding at a genuine level occurred is the degree to which we will begin to heal. And to the degree to which negative, angry, generalized, stereotypical feelings got repressed, they will explode. Because this was the repression of frustration and anger. And it doesn't matter if anger is justified or not. It's literally immaterial because it will find its way to explode in your personal life or on a community scale. Does that make sense, or do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
Cool. So it's been fucking crazy. And yeah, so I'm very curious to see how much genuine understanding has occurred. I watched a lot of and again, I was so angry for so long when I drove out the second day. So I came back, I got my stuff in the middle, like 5 a.m. the next day. I got my stuff. I didn't know if there's going to be more riots. Got some stuff, took a quick nap because I hadn't slept, and drove out again midday. And there were so many people coming in. They clearly were not there protesting. They had their phones out, and they were taking images like Instagram porn, you know. And you saw that one LA woman asking, "Can I drill your thing?" And I was fucking angry at them. I was so livid at everyone.
Yeah, trying to get the social media
for trying to get clout. Yes.
The damage.
And so the answer for me is I haven't processed it all. I got to sit down and process all that because I'm fucking livid, you know. And so I tried to get as much as I could before the podcast, but I recognize that I still have a tremendous amount of frustration inside of me. But let's zoom out and then talk about what this means at a macro level. Now, what I said to you, and certainly some of it is driven by rationality and a lot of it's driven by an emotional reaction, is that I want to move. I'm like, I'm getting out of here. I think that this is the beginning of a 75-year debt cycle end. So I don't want to talk the whole time. Let's ping pong on this. I've explained this to you. Do you want to start by doing it just so I'm not dominating?
No, dominate away.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So I read Ray Dalio, and he's been talking about the debt cycle for his entire fucking career, right? And essentially the debt cycle looks like this. Every 5 to 10 years, there's a short-term bubble. And you saw this with the dot-com bubble, the financial bubble. You go back in 88 and whatever year, 5 to 10 years, we get over leverage, we spend too much money, and it explodes. And we all experience that. And the answer is buy low, sell high. And for our whole lives, that's the answer. Don't panic in the bubble. That's the short-term cycle. But there's also
examples of that would be the dot-com bubble, the 2008 crash.
So if you bought in 2008, you made a ton of money. And so it's like the answer is like just trust. We're going to get through it. Don't over panic. There's also a long-term debt cycle that occurs over 75 or 80 years. And that, it does not take 1 or 2 or 3 years to repair. That takes 10 or 20 years. And it's essentially occurs when a society has borrowed so much financially, education-wise, socially against its own future that it can no longer sustain living on credit. And the last time the debt cycle exploded in the U.S., the long-term one, was 1930.
Yeah, the Great Depression.
The Great Depression.
What was the one before that?
It was the Civil War.
Got it.
So, and then before that, I think it was like the Revolutionary or 1790 or something like that. But Ray Dalio goes back through it's fascinating. He goes back through to various empires. You can read him, type in Ray Dalio, LinkedIn Pulse. He's got a whole series. He goes back to the Dutch and the blanks and the this and the that. And he, I think, makes a great argument that these debt cycles come in predictable cycles. They have predictable things and they have predictable outcomes. The problem is that when people try to identify patterns in their own life, they only are capable of using the span of their own life. So I can only look back 32 years. My dad can only look back 62 years. Neither of us was alive for the last Great Depression. The other problem is, and this is from a book, The Fourth Turning, is that we are reactions to the world in which we grew up in and our parents. So the people who survived the last debt cycle were my grandpa. He was 8 years old in the Great Depression. He sold shoes. He was a G. Then he fought in World War II, right? Survived the Battle of the Bulge, didn't talk to it, didn't say anything to anybody for the rest of his life. Nobody knows why he has these German guns. He's just like,
Did he get a medal?
Dude, nobody knows anything about my grandpa. He has this Medal of Valor for the Battle of the Bulge. He never discussed it with anyone. So that was the greatest generation, right?
A hardened man.
And I don't mean that facetiously. Like that was the time. And he died with living a normal life and having 10 kids. He died with over $1 million in the bank.
Yeah.
He pinched pennies. He saved. He cut coupons. And and he never adjusted to the world that wasn't the Great Depression, right?
He was waiting for the next Great Depression.
Exactly.
Which he thought would happen at any moment.
Exactly. So his kids that were actually spanned over 2 generations because he had so many, but are predominantly boomers, grew up in a very different world.
Mm-hmm.
They felt differently about savings and this and that. Some of them became hippies because, fuck the system. We don't need. And my grandpa couldn't understand why his sons didn't want to go fight in Vietnam. He was like, war, this is your war. Wars are great. You're going to go save the world. It's going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. So they didn't understand each other. And then they had kids. And what happens is approximately every 20 years is a new generation. But by the 4th generation, you have had one generation who laid the foundations for a society that was stable, prosperous, growing, but also, emotionally stunted. And these other generations bring and add things, but one of the things that they don't bring is financial stability. We, and everyone I know, plans on tomorrow being better than today, procrastinates, puts off, thinks that their individual existence is more important than the collective.
Well, also, as much as people will try to laud hustle culture in the entrepreneur community, there's not as much grinding versus if you grew up in the Great Depression and then you got a job and your job was cut metal. You're like, I will cut metal 14 hours a day, every day that you will pay me because I remember when food was hard.
Yeah.
Versus people today, they don't want to do that. They want to work remote. They want to work lifestyle. We're the exact same way, right? You
could not have sold get rich quick products to my grandpa.
Yeah, you don't have the same.
It wouldn't work.
And I'm sure there are certainly people who will grind, and there definitely are people who do hard manual labor. But on the whole, I'd say through the generation is a much smaller percent of the population who will just work incredibly hard and be grateful for their incredibly difficult job relative to.
And so what you see as Ray Dalio maps out is you see as an empire solidifies and rises in power, it's almost like working out, which is the day that you're at peak physical condition isn't the day that you put in the work. It's days, months, weeks after. Yeah. So like the work to build a stable society is investing heavily in education, working incredibly hard, social cohesion. That is, you see China is often at the expense of individual expression. And then you get that powerful status, and then you get a number of benefits. You get military, you can go and start invading other countries, and I don't mean this moralistically, but the benefit financially is you can just take their stuff. Shouldn't do it, but that's what happens. You get to have the world reserve currency, which means you're going to take dollars, and you're going to have to pay us back for World War II in dollars. And by the way, we print the dollars, so that's a tremendous financial thing. But you get that after you've earned it. And then what happens is when you live this life and you're born into this world, you don't keep earning it. So essentially what I'm saying is that...
And you don't feel like you have to. Because
everything always worked out, and you didn't have to go fight in Vietnam. And we're done with the draft. We're not going to do any more drafts. That was done in Vietnam, So all this to say, there's these 80-year cycles that roughly match the generations and match this temperament of saving and spending, like building for the future and enjoying today. And there's not to pass any judgment on any one of those eras because all are necessary towards this cyclical growth, but I believe that we have come to the end of a cycle. I believe that 2020, and quite frankly, you could argue that it happened as early as 2008 and then was extended with this fiscal quantitative easing. We are at the end of a long-term debt cycle. This is Ray Dalio. I'm just parroting him. But we are in for 10 to 20 years of restructuring.
Well, and according to Ray Dalio, the signs that is occurring are large and increasing wealth inequality.
Oh, and he charts this.
Right?
If you look, and this, I don't think I need to preach to you guys, wealth inequality has been getting more and more extreme.
So large wealth inequality, productivity, what you generate as a country, being less than your debt, which is true of America today.
Productivity being less than your debt. I'm confused. Say that again.
Like your country is lending out, is borrowing more money than it's producing.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're not creating with GDP as much as you are either printing or borrowing.
And in your own life, this is to say, I'll pay back tomorrow. I give me what I want today.
A negative savings rate.
Yeah. I'll do the work tomorrow. I'll study tomorrow. You can have debt in 100 different ways.
And then a natural disaster.
Yeah. Pandemics, natural disasters, wars, which, by the way, become more and more likely and get handled worse and worse as there's less to go around, the social structure breaks down. And because when you have spent everything on credit, and you can think of this in your own life, once you're deep into credit card debt and then you get a bill for your car, you can't really handle that. And then that spirals. So
and I'm not saying any of this is true necessarily, but this is what Ray Dalio says, is when you see those three things at the same time, your country's in trouble.
Yeah.
And we have all three at the same time.
And I think I agree, and I'm not here to persuade. Well, I kind of am. I'm here to have the discussion about it, and I would love for someone to talk me out of it too. Sorry for my voice cracking so many times today. That this is happening now or has been starting, and what we are in store for, and this is part of the reason that I don't know if I want to live here, is that we're in for more, and it's not, even if every demand is met from the Black Lives Matter group, and there's massive reform of the police structure, etc., I don't think that stops the economic frustrations that laid a lot of the brush for what went up. Because inequality, I mean, this is the thing. People are like, Jeff Bezos has all the money. Well, all the small businesses in America just didn't show up for 2 months. And then many of them in downtown areas were destroyed and had all their inventory taken. So what you're going to see is the collapse, if it hasn't already happened, of small businesses. Mm-hmm. And there will be a few more loans. Again, we're running on credit in so many ways. And I don't mean to be doom and gloom. And I'm not doom and gloom. I'm not saying the world's going to end. But Jeff Bezos, you know how much money he made off of these riots?
Yeah.
Like protests, riots, looting, call it whatever you want. I have to go to Amazon. I can't walk down the street and purchase anything. He just made so much money. So guess what? Wealth inequality, which used to be more distributed amongst the small businesses, that just all went all the way up the chain. So you have more people joining this despondent, frustrated class, and a handful of people that are just with an insane amount of money. Now, I'm not saying that that's Jeff Bezos' fault, but it is the way that things are headed. Mm-hmm. So I think that frustration is going to boil over. You're going to see civil unrest. You're going to see an argumentation about what to do with dwindling funds. And the other thing that complicates this is that these debt cycles can occur at the beginning and the end of an empire, and they have different effects when it's in the middle of an empire versus the end of an empire. You guys have known this since you've been growing up. By every metric, since you've been a little kid, you've been told China's, U.S. is big, China's fast growing, the U.S. is big, China's fast growing. In terms of power, you might have also felt with politics that you've been hearing a lot more about how aggressive and bad China is. Without passing judgment on China, what that is most indicative of is that they are becoming more and more of an obvious rival and needs to be positioned as such.
Yeah, and the reason
the American public.
You say that is because, for instance, you're not hearing a lot about the tragedies that happen in other countries.
Congo's been at war forever. You know what I mean? Like, there are awful things.
Yeah, which is not to minimize that there are potentially very terrible things happening in China. It's just to say that you hear about it so much relative to...
If you were alive in the 60s, Russia,
meanwhile, what's the deal with the Congo and Rwanda? It's like the worst loss of lives.
It's the most loss of lives since World War II. And again, it's impossible to say when the war started and ended because these conflicts are always happening. Mm-hmm. But if you were to take the full 25 years or so that it's been going on, it's insane. But they normally take 6 at a time. They take the first Congolese war or the second Congolese war. But
you just generally don't hear rhetoric about it.
Yeah, you don't hear anything about it because they're not a rival, and we don't need to demonize them, and we're not interested in, from an empire perspective, taking from that area right now. Again, I'm trying to describe things as they are without even commenting on the morality of them. Obviously, I don't think that that's a great thing, that we just don't care of the suffering of people in places that aren't geopolitically interesting. But so I think what Ray Dalio shows is that China, by every metric, and I don't need to say them all, but they have invested heavily in education. They have a very cohesive social unit, and you can complain that it's authoritarian, but it's going to help them to stamp out this pandemic very quickly. It's going to help them to organize production very quickly.
Might not be great on the ground level. Might not be great to be an individual there. And I'm not saying it's bad, by the way, but I'm just saying that the fact this is good for their empire is agnostic to if it's good for individuals.
Sure. So what happens is that China is like the guy at the gym who is putting in all the work but isn't quite as strong as the other guy.
Yeah.
And America is like the guy that has been the tough guy for a long time and is like
he just got a boyfriend or girlfriend and now he's eating ice cream. He's not working out as hard. And you go, well, I'm bigger than you still. Yes, but not forever, and not with this behavior. And this behavior is not going to turn around because it's built into the generations. And one of the interesting things that I've kind of added to this, so if it doesn't make sense, this is not Ray Dalio's fault, is that you see a mix of generations depending upon when people emigrated to America. So in the first generation immigrants from almost all over the planet, what you see is that ethos that my grandpa had, which is like, I'm going to bust my butt. I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to save. My life
is to improve the quality of life for my children. And I'm going to make sure that they understand that education is the way and they don't mess around. And you see that from immigrants all over the world coming to America. So there are these different generations. But if you've lived in America or you have a genealogy since the Great Depression, it's likely that your family has followed this pattern because this has been the dominant pattern of American culture.
And there are exceptions.
Sure.
It's just a comment on the society as a whole.
Your mom and dad might not have been hippies, or you know what I mean. They might have been straight laced.
You might be incredibly hardworking.
Yes.
Which is not to say that everybody alive today is not.
Of course. But I see myself in the descriptions. I mean, I'm a YouTuber who's like burned out from one video a week, which is like, what am I talking about? What a
grandpa
soft,
would be ashamed of
I got scared when people were outside my house. You know, like I'm soft. I'm so soft, and it's only a product of my life experience. So anyway, did I think that this is happening? The Chinese empire is rising, which means that there's going to be a smaller pie for America to divvy up. One of the other things that Ray Dalio talks about, again, no judgment on this, is that empires can add to their own tax pool and resource pool by just invading other countries. And the U.S. has done that throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s. They've gone everywhere. And at first, it was very profitable to set up United Fruit in Guatemala and exploit the people there and take out this democracy. And what you've seen is that these wars, and this is what Ray Dalio says, increasing wars that are just money sucks and aren't even profitable, let alone the moral implications of them. So Iraq and Afghanistan might have made some money for some of the contractors, but have been an incredible drain on the American people and population, which is exactly what you would expect at the end of these empires. Is you just go and you try, and it doesn't work. So I believe that what we are going to experience, and it might have a lot of different faces and different groups expressing frustration and grievances, but is increased civil unrest that is driven by the end of the American empire, a smaller pie to divide up amongst people who are already frustrated at what's going on. The rich will demonize the poor and run from them. The poor will demonize the police state and the rich and run from them. And I think that that's happening. Now, what to do?
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
What could convince you that Ray Dalio was incorrect? What evidence would make you feel like this was not the next Great Depression?
Well, so I have always been someone who said we don't live in special times. In the sense of like, look, this year is just like last year in all the ways. And so I do feel like I've been pretty careful on this one. So it's going to take a lot of evidence because I'm just saying this is the most unique year in the last 75. Not that it's never happened before, but what evidence could convince me? If someone did an analysis of Ray Dalio's thing and was like, actually, he's wrong here, he's wrong. And just like pointed to flaws in this. And actually, China hasn't done this. And actually, the U.S. hasn't done this. And the debt in these countries isn't bad. But it's everything that I'm reading. I was looking at good places to go. Tax revenues are down, money isn't there. And the other thing is, it would be very tough to fight my anecdotal experience of the people I know and the way they live because they live on credit.
So let's say, like, for instance, I don't think this is even possible, but Bernie somehow, Biden steps down, Bernie wins, Bernie becomes president, and Bernie forcibly closes the wealth gap. Would that make you feel?
No, because I think that it's I think that Ray Dalio has a second order effect, which is the credit thing. And I actually think this book, The Fourth Turning, has the first order effect, which is the generational thing. I think what causes patterns of spending and using credit is life experience. And I think the problem is that so many people have a life experience that you can just, tomorrow will be better. I don't need to work for it. And so what could change the culture of America to be... If the culture of America could somehow change to work harder today for a better tomorrow on the whole, to have austerity measures in order to improve the life of your family and your community in the future, then my mind could be changed. I don't know if that has ever happened, if a leader has been able to galvanize and change a culture, like pivot it so hard, but that would change my mind. If I was like, oh my God, I mean, I know someone who is not working very hard, doesn't have a ton of money, didn't know how this financial thing was going to impact them, but really wanted a Peloton. Really wanted a Peloton. And so in order to get it, took it out on installments, despite talking with me and being like, please don't do this. I know that this isn't a big deal to you, but it's indicative of everything that's happening in America to me. You do not need a Peloton. You should not be taking this out in installments. You have no money. You're already in credit.
Yeah.
And I just see that decision. And then I watched what people did with their stimulus checks just from afar. And I watched my brother, who sells sunglasses online, have the biggest day of sales he's ever had the day that the stimulus check hit. That stimulus check was not for, hopefully, buying sunglasses. You know, it was for like, hey, you can't work, you need to buy food and these sorts of things. I don't see any adjustments being made to the universe being like, hey, wake up, you can't do this.
And just to clarify, because you said the idea that tomorrow will be better than today, I don't know. It looks like there's a lot of people who maybe don't even necessarily think that.
Yeah.
Based on what we're seeing with the protests and everything, they think that maybe society is getting worse. But you're saying they think that society, and correct me if I'm wrong, they think society is getting worse in a lot of ways. The government's worse, the police are worse, but not necessarily translating that into changing their spending. So if you ask them on a survey with a lie detector, do you think that America is getting better every day or every year? They would say no.
Yeah.
They'd say things are worse, the inequality is bad, the racism is bad, the government is bad. And you go, okay, that's good. That's a good sign for not having an economic collapse. But you're saying if you looked at their spending patterns, they spend as if that's not what they believe. There's a disconnect almost between the pessimism they have for the society and the economic optimism in terms of having a negative savings rate.
It's not even necessarily a disconnect. It's just like, well, fuck it. You know, it could be a complete connect in that sense. But the response is not my grandpa's response, which is I'm going to buckle down, work hard.
I'm just saying you're not actually saying that most people in America are optimistic about our government or their station in life or the political situation. You're just saying that they spend more than they save.
Correct. And I think, unfortunately, that a lot of the solutions being proposed, and this isn't to say that it's never the case that someone else needs to change, but all the solutions that I'm hearing are that someone else needs to change. And I think the only answer in terms of personal life and your personal relationships and your community and your government is to go inside and be the change. It's Gandhi. Like, that's the only way to do it. Is I think Martin Luther King and Gandhi will stand out the test of time because of the incredible inner work that they did to change themselves first.
Yeah, and for example, they were still very, very much
and incredibly
activists.
effective.
Very much activists, but their answer to wanting more peace in the world was to be very peaceful.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Not that they did nothing. Not that they only focused on themselves.
Jesus, Gandhi, MLK, you name them. I mean, these people are political. There's no question that they're political.
But that they affect change by saying, we want less violence against us. And we will be less violent
in the face
to
of
show you the way.
Incredible temptation. In the face of incredible temptation.
Justice.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. So when you say go inside, you don't mean go inside and ignore the world.
No.
You mean if you want...
Thank you for clarifying.
If you want less violence in the world, the key is to be the type of person you wish everyone else was, and then show that being nonviolent when you get shoved, when you get tripped, when you get spit on, or whatever it might be. That's being the change you want to see in the world. It's not just being in your house alone. It's not to say don't be active, but it's to say if you want people to be less violent, pursuing it through violence is not going to be, in your mind, an effective way to create change.
Yes, exactly. And this does not preclude protest. What it means is that if you're protest,
led protests, and so
of course, protest. What it means is if you're seeking for, like, what are you seeking from the opposition? Understanding? Then you must sit first and understand them. And I don't mean characterize them. I mean, you must get them, feel them, like walk in the shoes of that feeling in your own life. So if you hate police or if you're frustrated with the police, sit down, meditate on what it is like to have you and 29 of your friends standing in front of 500 people screaming at you. And ask yourself, could I see myself reaching for the mace before it was explicitly necessary?
Because you're scared, or
because
whatever
you're
it might be.
scared.
And then also, if you're racist, to think through what would it be like to have grown up in that person's shoes with their socioeconomic background in their neighborhood, with what they feel because of what they look like. Right? It's all sides.
It's everybody. And then the hardest ones are the people, and this is the repression thing that I think is happening. There's this, Paul, our friend, recommended this book, White Fragility, to me. And it's interesting. There's parts which I disagree with, but I think one of the things that it gets right is that racism is just the way that it's used in America is as a mad way to prove that you're not. Like, the whole goal anytime racism is brought up is not to reflect. It is to escape the crosshairs of it. And so what I see in people attending, and I don't mean you, Justin, you know who I'm talking about, who have attended these rallies, who have not been active but are posting, is an attempt to escape the crosshairs and not an attempt to reflect deeply and understand their own prejudices. Because I think that one of the things that happens in everybody is we all have multiple personalities. And what we repress in ourselves, from our grief to our anger to our racism, and our racism can extend to judgment of all kinds of things, the way someone looks, how tall they are, if they smell, if they're a guy or a girl, whatever. If we know that socially we cannot express that, so we repress it in ourselves, and we just go, I'm not racist, I'm not racist, I'm not racist, or I'm not this, that, and we never look at the part of ourselves that wants to other everyone, stand above, separate based on skin color, gender, you fucking name it, then we never confront that inside of ourselves, and it drives our behavior in 100 different ways, and we just behave in such a way that we can, and then we go, here's what we do. That's the bigot. Get him, right? Because what we have inside of ourselves is this desire to be on the winning team, and we just will flip teams, right? So that judgmental thing that could have come out as racism is now coming out as kill all the cops, or, whatever. So it's been fucking crazy.
So what would you advocate if people want to change? Peaceful protest is what it sounds like.
So I hate to do this because we do it on every podcast. Psychedelics. No, I think the emotional mastery course that I'm creating right now, and I know that this doesn't scale, but if you're out there going, what do? I think is going to be excellent for this.
Well, let's say,
but I'll give you some stuff right now if you want stuff.
No, I'm just saying, let's say that I'm someone, whatever my race is, that I think that life's been unfair to a certain group, and I identify with these people's cause.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what do I do?
So you sit down and you write down honestly, or there's a couple things. This one is a little bit surface level. You write down your judgment of taking the cops, and you rewrite quickly. You don't write it like it's going to be read. You don't write it like you're going to have to say everybody.
Yeah, you're going to burn it afterwards. No one's
You
going to
burn
see
it. And so you write the truth of your feelings, not the truth of your thoughts and what you know to be true, the way that you feel, which
horrendous
is
shit. That's absolutely wrong.
Heinous. Yeah. It should look horrible. You should judge it, because here's the thing, you are judging it inside of yourself. And you write down all cops or pigs or whatever it is that you need to write down that is an honest expression of that. And this is The Work by Byron Katie. And then you take these, you can analyze these, you can read the work more, but one of the most critical things is to say, the things that I judge in the world, in other groups, are the aspects of myself, and I found this to be true every time, which I have not yet accepted. The things that trigger me and upset me in others are the pieces of myself that I can't handle, and so I see them, and there it is.
So if I say, like, this group is irrational and violent, yes. That's because I think that on some level,
because
I am or desire to be irrational.
Exactly.
And violent.
And then you write down, how am I irrational and violent, or how do I want to be? And you have to be fucking honest with it. Mm-hmm. And what you will find, there's other things, there's parts integration things. I don't want to it's tough to describe, but essentially, day 20 something of emotional mastery is going to be heavy into this. So you sit down, you ask yourself, I'd like to call up this part of myself, and I did this before the podcast, that is going to limit me in this podcast. I was like, I want to see the part of myself that is going to really be difficult and make me suck on this podcast. And the first thing that came up was, and then I looked to my right, and you see what you see. And so what I saw was like a version of myself, like cringing. And then you judge it. You say, what do I see there? I see my fear, right? And then you go, okay, I want to be that part of myself. So you take a deep breath. You imagine yourself teleporting into this cringing guy, or whatever it is. It can be a being of any kind.
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
Scared because of the judgment of the podcast? Scared because of what happened to us in our home?
Both. I got both.
Okay.
I did this a number of times, but both came up. Scared because I would say something that would bring an internet mob down on me. Mm-hmm. And so you feel that. And when in the experience of feeling it, you begin to integrate it. So you're no longer repressing it. You acknowledge that you have it. I also found a fuck ton of anger when I did this. And I was like, oh shit, I'm not supposed to be angry about this because I'm privileged, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not supposed to be furious that my neighborhood got smashed up. But it's not helpful for me to pretend and be polite. Yeah. What I have to do is be what I am, handle my shit, integrate it, bring it in, and then the energy can diffuse. So you do this process, and you can have a dialogue with another part of yourself. I don't want to talk about it too much.
Does acknowledging that you are angry about what happened in our neighborhood allow you to be less judgmental of other people who are angry because of what's been happening in their neighborhood?
You nailed it. You cannot, if you can't feel someone else, it's because you cannot feel that part of yourself. Mm. And if you hate them, it's because you hate that part of yourself.
So when you hide the fact that you're angry, you have really muted your ability to empathize with somebody else who is angry.
Yes.
When you go into yourself, and
I would
without
never
judgment,
I would never hurt, and then I start separating myself from that aspect. I would never do those things.
And when you go and feel your anger, even though you judge it with your front brain, you go feel it, you realize you have it, then you look at other people acting out in anger, and you're able to empathize with them more, which lets you understand them more.
You're not a monster. I get it. I'm you. I fucking get it. You're nailing it. You're nailing it 100%. And so it's not just this is the thing that is subtle within this process, is that you can't just writing down I am angry is not the same as feeling I am angry. There's a third person experience of your anger, which is to look at it when you're like, oh, I see that cringing, hiding self or whatever. And there's the first person experience, which is to take that breath and then be in that cringing body, and you'll feel your skin will stand up. You will have a completely different experience when you feel it first person versus third person. And that experience of moving from first to third person is the secret to life, like to being, oh my God, it's different being inside of anger than it is looking at anger. And then when you can dialogue and you also bring in the other part, because there's almost always an opposing aspect. So for instance, I felt this sheltered stuff and I said, okay, I want to now feel the part of myself that is anti this sheltered thing. What is it? And so I looked over, I come back to center Charlie. I look over and I see this cool dude in sunglasses being like, what's up, man? And I was like, okay, what is my judgment? It's like, that guy's fucking cool. He's like too cool for school. And then I go first person into him. And I go first person into the sunglasses. I go, oh, this guy's fucking terrified of being judged for not being cool. And I felt it. I was like, he's wearing sunglasses because he's fucking scared. And he's super stiff, not because he's like me, not because he's cold-blooded and cool, but because he's frozen in terror. And that terror was of being judged or whatever. So anyway, in experiencing these different rival parts of yourself, you gain empathy, you can function without the charge, you can do so many different things. It's an awesome process, and I rushed it. I didn't finish it prior to this podcast, so I'm not perfect, but it's helped me to start to talk about this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just had a thought, which I don't know I don't even know if it's controversial anymore, but Jordan Peterson says something that I think is very interesting, which is that most people, if most of us were born into Nazi Germany, they would be Nazis.
Yeah.
Right? And it's very easy from the outside and from the future to look back and go, those are terrible humans, right? And I'm Jewish, so like I get it. They did terrible things. Yeah. I'm not here to defend it. And within Nazi Germany, there were in fact terrible people that went above and beyond, that were sadists, that were just really, awful human beings. But most of the people, right, the majority of the people in Nazi Germany were people. And if you were in Nazi Germany at that time, you would have behaved like them, which means some small group of people would have secretly and quietly hidden some Jews.
Yep.
A large group of people, most of the people listening to this, would have done what they had to do to get along to survive for their family. Because, by the way, if you openly oppose Nazi Germany government, you and your family are in trouble, right? So you're not going to take pleasure in it, but you're going to pull the lever that gasses the Jews, right? Or you're going to be on the front lines shooting Americans. Yeah. And I think when you sit with that idea, and at first it's very repulsive. Trust me, I get it. You don't want to think that. You want to think you're going to be, and some of us would, that very, very special group of people hiding Jews. But you accept that most of the people you love, most of your friends, most of your neighbors would be there being Nazis. And then you apply that to today. And so you go, depending on where you were born, what circumstances you had as a child, you could very easily have been a looter, a protester, a cop, someone arrested for a violent crime. Yeah. Like you're
a bigot. This is the thing. So what we've done, sorry to interrupt, is we basically try to have compassion for groups that are close to us, but you even started to, you're like, but some were sadists. It's like, you not have to. Getting to feel everything is where the true power is.
I'm just saying not everything's excusable, right?
It doesn't need to be excusable to be understood.
Sure. And so then you go through and you go, okay, so does that mean that things shouldn't change? Absolutely not. Should we try to go for systemic change?
Yep.
Yes. But you can go for systemic change without demonizing the group. And so, for instance, Germans now seem to be pretty awesome. They seem to be some of the least bigoted people they in many cases love to party and are very liberal and free thinking and just fun.
I love that you start with love to party.
No, I'm just saying, like, they're not Nazis. When you think about Nazis, they're the exact opposite. Which is to say, okay, there was nothing about the German DNA that made them this way. And so you do the same thing here. You go, listen, am I okay with what is happening today? Not necessarily. Do I want to change the system? Yes. But can I do it without saying that all, and then just fill in your group, are evil? Mm-hmm. And your answer has to be yes. Because if your answer is no, this entire group is evil, you will never achieve what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Actually, selfishly, you have to stop doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And I think that Jordan Peterson, I don't know if he invented it, but that thought exercise I found from him is a very useful tool for getting you to that point. Because whatever you want to achieve, if you think the other side is evil and dumb, you are guaranteed to fail at achieving your change. Mm-hmm. And simultaneously, if you have understanding for them and empathy for them as a group, you can still hate individuals within the group, and you can still try to change the system that creates the behavior you don't like.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
No, the point that you've raised well, because I forget to say this sometimes, is people assume that understanding implies condoning and perpetuating, and it does not. In fact, understanding is one of the most powerful ways that you can change things. Like, you have to become it in order to move it and to change it, as opposed to fighting it. One of the things, and I think that Jordan Peterson, it's an excellent exercise, but one of the things that I've seen as you go deeper is that there is a subtle difference between thinking exercises and feeling exercises. And so I've done a lot of, we sat and we like thought through what are people going to say.
Well, that one for me is very helpful though, personally, just in terms of realizing that none of these people, I got held up at gunpoint in Brazil.
Yeah.
I got a gun pointed at my head. It was, honestly, weirdly enough, not scarier than the riots, but certainly my life was in more danger. A gun was 6 inches from my face, cocked and loaded, right? Without this thought exercise, it would have been very easy for me to go, that person was evil, and I can't believe they put my life at risk for money.
Yeah.
But because of this thought exercise, I was able to go, if I were born in a favela in Brazil, I would do the exact same thing.
Yep.
Because my only means for getting out, in my mind, whether it's true or not, would have been robbing people.
Sure.
And so it let me not be angry at that person.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, I could advocate for different gun laws in Brazil. I could advocate for different poverty laws in Brazil. I could advocate for all sorts of stuff to change the system. But this thought exercise for me is the reason I don't begrudge that kid.
Sure. So I'm going to draw a subtle difference, and I'm not sure how it relates to you. And there are certainly areas where the thought exercise is perfect. It's enough. It does it. There's other areas in which we might be more triggered, in which thought exercise, while good, only goes halfway. So
I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just saying it's really effective.
So here's one of the things, and I just, not for you but for people, like, your goal was implicitly, you're like, it helped me not be angry. And what I'm actually advising is slightly different. It's like, feel the anger.
Oh, no, I'm saying angry. It helped me not begrudge that person.
Sure.
It helped me not forget anger. It helped me not think that person was evil and worse than me.
Yes. And so the question is, which I don't know what's occurring in you, is that top brain thinking that matches a gut level experience of the poor as that in communion, or have you managed to repress a feeling of disdain for the poor? And you're not going to answer it on this podcast.
Not for that. Well, I think I can. Not for that one, because my overwhelming experience isn't that. You know, maybe if every single day a Brazilian kid pointed a gun at me and robbed me, at some point I'd have some subconscious resentment. But for me, it was one very emotionally charged moment
that you were able to dispel.
Amongst a sea of buying coconuts from people on the beach, whatever it might be, like that wasn't my majority experience in life, and it didn't happen at a formative age.
Exactly.
And so I actually think I'm in line on that one, because I didn't grow up having guns thrown into my face, nor have I had 100 guns thrown in my face. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So there isn't that repressed subconscious belief.
Okay. 100%. And I believe you. If it is the case that somebody has something that is more triggering. And the other thing, which I will say,
which again, and it's not because they're worse than me and I'm better.
No,
just because I didn't have this happen to me
whatever
every day.
You didn't control your reaction. That's the thing. Reactions happen, and we try to judge it and say this is inappropriate to the situation, and I should be more forgiving because he's just this poor kid. But if you feel anger, that does not go away by you telling it it's not real. And we learn from it. This is the whole crux of what I've been trying to teach in this course, which I keep plugging it, but I think it's going to be fucking great. Is we are conditioned from a young age to prize behavior over being. And that means that we say we are sorry without feeling sorry. We say thank you with no gratitude. And so we do not become kind people. We become polite people.
It takes so much work to not say I'm sorry unless you're actually sorry.
Yeah.
I've been trying to do it. I catch myself so often. I think that's probably a lot of people's experience.
Sure.
They express emotions that they don't actually feel because they think that they're supposed to, or just because it's a habit.
Exactly. And so right now, what I see is a tremendous amount of pressure in social media and the news to express the politically correct opinion, which may or may not match what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
going to vary depending on your political party.
And it's going to vary. So maybe it's fucking perfect, but maybe it's not. So what I would recommend is before you try to change other people or engage in too much dialogue, it's really helpful to go inside, do the exercise that I said, and be like, how do I feel? And encounter that deep hatred of whoever hurt you, and the sadness and the fear and the desire to take from someone who has wronged you. And when you do that, then you can like go out and be much more effective in the world. So
also, probably if you actually care about affecting change, study the people that have been most effective at affecting change. Would be my
number
advice.
one. I mean, Buddha, Jesus, who else? You know what I mean? What are these people if not paragons of no self-understanding?
Sure. And right? I'm not even going to tell people where to look, but my thing is just, let's say that you are like, listen, all this emotional mumbo jumbo, I'm not concerned about myself. I want to change the system. I'd say, great. Study other people who have changed the system successfully.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find that a lot of it is going to line up with, weirdly enough, what you, Charlie, have been saying.
There's also, and I think it's worth saying, there's a lot of violence that has changed the system for a long time. Alexander the Great didn't talk to people. He came and he conquered.
He had the power.
He had the power. And so the question is, what do you want? Do you want to affect behavioral change in your enemies and in people? Or do you want to live in a world that has increased understanding and compassion? Because you don't need to understand people to affect change. You can you can do horrible things to people and control their bodies.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Alexander the Great is a great example. That's not the populace changing the system for the better.
Sure.
And making their lives better.
Let's take, for example, Hitler, who was able to control a ton of people with no understanding. He got people to die, to move, to do hard labor, with no understanding. So violence works to move bodies. It doesn't, this is so cheesy, it doesn't work to move souls or spirits or emotions or any of that kind of stuff. So what else do we have? God, I had a podcast prior to all of this happening.
Do you want to know how outdated my notes are?
I have so much.
I saw a video, which I still stand by. I really said this in the beginning. No one has any idea what's happening in any of these protests. Yeah. I saw a video where there was a white guy that walks up to a building, smashes a window, and leaves. And it convinced me that in that moment, what he was trying to do was incite looting to undermine the protests. And I still think that for that one camera, right?
Yeah.
So I was going to come on the podcast and say, I have no idea who's rioting and looting, but to me, I'm not convinced it's the protesters. I still don't think it's the protesters, but I no longer think it's 100% incited by, what are they called? Saboteurs?
Yeah.
Because I watched our neighborhood be like that. The same person that broke the window stole the stuff. And so I was like, all right, well, that's a note I was going to say. Say. Here's another thing I was going to say. LA is back open. Hey guys, the COVID shutdown is over. Okay, cool.
To be clear, the COVID shutdown is over.
My neighborhood has never been more closed. I could barely get home this morning. The roads are blocked. So it's like, oh, well, that's outdated.
Yeah.
But doing these podcasts every 2 weeks is funny because like you just have things that are not true 12 days later when you look at them. So the other thing is,
I have funny ones. They're just completely different, but go ahead.
Well, no, I have one. So protests and COVID. Like for a while, it's funny. For a while, we were told if you gather in groups, you gather outside, you're a murderer because you're passing around corona and you're killing people and you're a demon. Now we're told we should go outside and congregate because that's like the socially responsible thing to do. Corona's still out there. I'm very curious to see what happens.
Yeah.
You do see a lot of protesters wearing masks, which is good, but they're very, very close together. There are people screaming and yelling. This almost, in my mind, guarantees a second wave in urban areas. But I also don't think the country is set up to be able to shut down because I think
we can't shut down.
Exactly. So
we will.
We're just gonna.
I hate it, but we can't.
We're just gonna have corona. I actually don't think there's gonna be a shutdown. I think we're just gonna for a little bit run an experiment called what happens if corona runs rampant, and then maybe if there's a ton of corona deaths, we'll shut down. But I don't think we can flatten the curve preemptively again.
I think, and again, this is based on just no data, but my gut says that we're at the point because I think that the people who die in these protests. You have to ascribe some of it to economics, like that there would have been protests, but there would have been less looting, which means there would have been lowered police response, which means you know what I mean? So we have some deaths that are stacking up on the shutdown side. And we said this from the beginning. Like, it's lives on both sides. There are people who are going to die of coronavirus, and there's going to be people who die of the economic.
Yeah. The situation is just rough. There's a pandemic and tons of social inequality and wealth inequality.
The question is, when have we crossed the line? And I think we have, where it's like, we need to brave the pandemic because the economic outcome of, I mean, it's teetering, man. If things got worse, we're 3 meals away from a revolution at any given point, and that is violent. Mm-hmm. So I think we're at the point where we need to brave some coronavirus
for a period of time,
and wear our masks and socially distance. But we got to. Economics are going to, or in my opinion, ought to drive things. But that's not based on anything. Here's a fun one. This is like the day after. You ever hear of Kiva.org? Kiva.
No.
It's microloans.
You have? Oh.
Kiva is microloans. So it's super cool. I really like the idea. You go on and you can find people in various things, and it lets you split it up by whatever interests you. You want to do women or conflict zones or agriculture, and you can give a loan to a specific person. So like I gave one to Thomas who needed some goats, and he got and it's a loan. This is amazing. He's done this once or twice before.
What interest rate are you extorting Thomas with?
I think there is interest. Some of them are no interest loans. Some of them are not. Mm-hmm. It's like 96% of the loans get paid back. So they do a really good job of checking, which means that on average, if I gave whatever money, I can expect 96% of it back, which is amazing. I saw his picture. He's in there. It is charity in a way that is so psychologically perfect.
Yeah, it's rewarding, right?
Oh my God. I had such a blast. I was like, let's pick someone else. Like I had Grace come over and was like, who do you want to, it feels really nice. And you read their story.
How much do you give to each person?
So you can give, there are people on there that are groups. And I actually want to talk about the psychology of how I felt in terms of my donation. So you can give anywhere. There's ones that are $50 or $100. There's ones that are $300, and there's groups that are like 5,000 or more than that.
But why would you rather give to a group than to 10 individuals?
I'd rather give to 10 individuals.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like 10 $500 loans
I think
feels better than one $5,000 loan.
I think that psychologically they could do a better job. They're doing amazing work. They're doing fucking amazing work.
Kiva.org with a K?
K. And so there was a couple things that I felt from a psychological perspective that I think are true of just one. I wanted to complete the loan. So it's crowdfunded. So somebody might have $100 of the $200. I wanted to finish or pay in an entirety a loan. So I actually wanted smaller amounts. And I'm fortunate I would have given more money, but they cap your loans at $500. And so there were times where I found a dude that I liked who needed $750. I was like, I want that guy. But because I could only give $500 and not complete it, I didn't want to do it. So they need to limit the cap on donations because there's a psychological trigger that would have made me feel good to be like, that's my boy. He's going to get his goats awesome. Or his fishing nets or whatever it is. So they need to get rid of that. The other thing is the groups did not speak to me. Is these group photos of these people together and this generic thing, and I didn't care. The other thing is that unfortunately, and I know I would have given more if this were not the case, there were several profiles that were repeated. So it was different faces of different people, but then this is Thomas. He has his wife and his 4 children in a hut in a small village, and and it was just repeated for several people.
This was Greg, and he also
has Greg, and he has a wife and 4 kids, and lives. And it was you don't all got 4 kids. I know you don't all have 4 kids. And then it's just some volunteer who is writing and probably copy pasting a story.
Yeah.
Now, are these people that have kids and a wife? Maybe. They all have stories. It's just if you could give me a little bit more insight, I know you would increase my tendency to donate. So it seems like that's an area that's worth bumping up. But anyway, it's super cool. I thought the psychological aspect of it was fascinating. And the idea that in 12 months, I might not have even lost any money on this. And
you can just help a guy out.
You just do it again.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's capitalism and charity, and it's very cool.
Yeah.
So,
do you think nonprofits should do the same thing?
I think microloans are fascinating because what they force you to do is to operate in the capitalist world that we do, which is not look, people are not going to give you things forever.
I was saying, for instance, we donated a lot of money to the Against Malaria Foundation, right, to buy nets.
Yeah.
I don't know when that money was deployed or who it went to.
Yeah.
Would they be better off? Now, that's weird because each net's only 10 cents, but would they be better off showing the photos of the people that the nets are going to go to before you donate, not after? You know what I mean? Just being here, are some of the people in the community.
Oh, you could pick 100%. And it's weird because I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but you pick the guy who's got the big smile or the woman who's got like who's there with her animal. Or
with
like
Against Malaria Foundation, if you're going to give $1,000, you're getting 10,000 nets.
Yeah.
So you're not going to select them all. So maybe you go select 20 people. You go, oh, I feel so good about helping those people.
Or you just get one guy who's a representative of his village or his whatever.
Exactly.
And you go, this is Thing. He's the leader of this village, and he's so excited because his 50
but people without good smiles are still going to get nets because you're
100%.
literally buying 10,000 nets for $1,000.
Yes. And what is missing is this connection. And so I realized my motivator psychologically was I wanted to feel good and feel connected, but also the thing that is scary, and I think one of the reasons that I don't donate more to people in my community is I am afraid of two things. One, I'm afraid of misspending, and Kiva does make me feel really good about that. But also, I'm afraid of the increased connection. There are people that stand on our corner that are screaming and mumbling or whatever, asking for money, and I'm afraid that they would target me every day as someone to like give them more money. I feel that desire to not be too connected. I would like to anonymously like donate if I knew that I felt the money was going to an appropriate place.
Well, again, not if somebody looks dangerous, don't do this, but I walk my dog every day, and so I purposely never bring my wallet. So when people are like, hey, can I have money? I'm just like, I don't have any. But that lets me not be afraid of them in that sense, which lets me actually talk to them. So I'm like, hey man, I don't have any money, sorry, but like I hope you have a good day. And there's a guy I've said that to a bunch of times, and like I recognize him now. He recognizes me. He doesn't ask for money, but like, we smile at each other as we
pass. Which is important, I think.
No, I actually think it's very helpful for him to have someone that sees him and smiles when they see him. You know what I mean?
I imagine it's incredibly dehumanizing to sit there, ask, and get no. This is
a non-response.
This is the other thing.
Just walk by and ignore him. But yeah, so I which is to say, like, I think actually you can contribute in other ways to people's lives, and you don't have to worry that they're gonna.
I don't mean to say everybody needs to donate their money or whatever, but one of the things that you just mentioned, and I wanted to say this earlier, is that I felt this way for a long while. Like, cities are insane, and they've gotten crazy. If you were to move to our area from the Midwest or anywhere, and you saw the blatant disregard for homelessness and the plight of the person who is on drugs on the bench, moaning in this diabolical, painful way, and then just watched hordes of people walk by completely you would be mortified. You'd be totally mortified. But that's common.
Yeah. Well, cities. And in a month you'd be doing the same thing.
And you'd be doing the same thing. It's not because you're a better person. You would acclimate to that very quickly. And it's like that is why that's the kindling, not just the homelessness, but the people who live outside or live nearby and can see into these apparently, at least financially privileged lives, feeling so close yet so separate from them, and also like so, if you watch Parasite, like so separate and judged and like they're stinky and disgusting. That is fucked up, man. That is not a community. That is a group of people who live together with the only thing tying them together being the police force, which separates one from the other.
Well, that's why my sister left LA, because she thought it didn't have a community.
I wanted a community for other reasons, but I realized it's not just about feeling good. It's about, like, when I was scared in my house, I called you. I was like, do you want to come down? But there's 50 other people in this building that I didn't call and didn't even think to call because we don't have a relationship where I would expect them to cover for me in the slightest.
No, yeah, everyone just boarded up in their own apartment.
So, yeah, anyway, I part of the reason I want to move is just like, that's not good. It's not healthy for me, for my life. It's not healthy for me to bypass people in the street, nor am I capable, I think, of really creating a community in this area. So I'd like to move somewhere where it's a bit more doable. Maybe that's a cop-out. Do you think that's a cop-out?
For why you want to move?
No. For the fact that I'm like, I can't do a community here. It's not conducive to community here. These isolated apartments,
you could do it.
Okay.
You could do it. You literally just like host a dinner or a barbecue.
Sorry, I don't mean the building necessarily. I mean the guy outside who is. I mean the dramatic amount of people with such a variety of life experiences and needs. And how many of our neighbors are we are just sleeping on benches? You know, those are our neighbors. How do you invite them to dinner as well? Maybe that's the answer. Maybe everybody comes to dinner. The guy next door and the person outside. Is that?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I don't have it either. But I certainly know that people did not loot what they felt like were their own people and friends. You
Yeah,
didn't go rob your friend's store. You robbed the other's store. And then you got the cops to shoot rubber bullets at the other. You know, it's just this whole divide, which is what Ray Dalio talks about. Anyway, do you have anything else that we were going to talk about prior to this madness?
Sure, yeah. Well, SpaceX happened. That's cool.
That's cool.
They managed to launch humans into space, and then I think most impressively re-land the rocket. I don't really have anything to add except for that it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I didn't watch it at all, but...
I just love that Elon Musk was like, why is this so expensive? It's because we have to rebuild the rocket every time. What if we didn't? People were like, well, you have to. He's like, let's just land it. And now here we are. Literally launched humans into space and then landed it on a platform to be reused as soon as it's cleaned, basically. Yeah. It's incredible.
So, dude, capitalism has a lot of problems, clearly, in the division of goods. But one thing it does really fucking well is solve problems. It doesn't allocate the resources, like, kindly, certainly. But, I mean, we had a government-run space thing for a long time. And you just let Elon do his market thing. And he's like, no. This is how I make stuff work.
No, I think capitalism is good for innovation, and it's good for net country wealth creation. And what it's bad for is wealth equality. Mm-hmm. But I don't have anything to add except for I thought that was really cool. And I just really like the fact that he solved the problem by thinking of something uniquely different. You know what I mean? It's not that he has better fuel.
He asks great questions. He's like, how can we do this 10 times cheaper?
Yeah.
You're like, what? Because most people are like, how do I do it 20% cheaper? He's like, no. It just puts you in a completely different universe of thought.
I want to do 10 of these launches for the cost that you do one.
Yeah. That's insane.
You go, well, it's impossible.
You're like, the only way to do that would be to not destroy the rocket. You're like,
to reuse
let's
the rocket.
figure it out.
Yep.
So yeah, that's awesome stuff. Here's a totally random one. I've seen this thing. So cancel culture exists. It's out there. It's this thing where you say something and then people will repeat it, the clip of it or the sentence. And oftentimes what is done, it doesn't have to be, but is that it will be taken out of context. Mm-hmm. So what people have learned to do, and I think it's dangerous, is to say the opposite of what they mean so that they're communicating the same sort of disdain, but if they were taken out of context, actually sounds friendly. So I think I see PewDiePie do it masterfully. One of the things that he says, which is, in my opinion, facetious, is he says, you have to respect all women, right? And he puts the wah instead of woman. And it's a funny joke, haha, because, you don't just respect everybody, whatever. But he doesn't say, it doesn't make sense to respect all women, comma, you need to judge people on their merit, because you could just grab the first piece of that sentence, slap it into a thing, and say PewDiePie says don't respect women. But when he says respect all women, he gets to say that over and over and over again, and he cannot effectively be taken out of context and destroyed. And I think this is a real issue, because people are not saying what they mean. And so it was a criticism of H3H3 is that, and I think it's reasonable, is he's making fun of this guy and he's going, he's a legend, man. He's a legend. And it's like, come on, man. You're teasing him. Like, you could say that he's being a legend, but don't let that get you off the hook. It might be good-natured ribbing. It might be, we can argue about that. But what you're saying is that this guy who makes cringe videos, he's like, he's a legend. It's like, dude, you think that what he does is stupid and you won't say it. And it's not just people have learned, particularly on the internet, to communicate in this way, which isn't saying what they think. And I think it's a predictable, dangerous response to cancel culture, which is now people are just speaking in code. And
why is it dangerous?
I think one of the ways that that discussion needs to occur is you need to trust the person that you're speaking with in order to solve problems.
I understand. If you're going to have a difficult philosophical debate, you need to
should we believe all women who make rape claims? Now, PewDiePie's just joking, you know what I mean? But you need to trust the person you're speaking with to not screw you and blackball you and say, oh, you said this, to try to.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I mean, most discussions on the internet are not about convincing the person you're talking to. They're just about the crowd.
Oh, dude, you nailed my next point. Good guy.
Thanks, dude.
I read this great article that was called The Internet of Beefs.
Yeah.
And it's just all about that. It's fucking hilarious. I'll just. So they talk about.
Thank You for Smoking does this, right? Mm-hmm. They're like, he's talking about ice cream with his kid. And he goes, well, I'm not convinced. He goes, I'm not trying to convince you.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
Convincing them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the internet is.
It's the Internet of Beefs, and it's this funny thing. He breaks it down as like feudal terms. So he talks about the knights, who are the influencers, and what he calls the mooks, which are all the people who go to war for them and like bleed.
Nice.
And he talks about the motivation of the mook.
Why a mook?
I don't know why he calls them mooks. I don't know what a mook is. But he's like the goal of the mook is to be recognized by his knight in that moment, his crowning glory. A retweet, which would make his day. The mooks will vie for nice. It's so funny. Let's see, and the knights.
I'm gonna Google this term.
I don't know what mooks mean. A common posture above the knights is that the mooks are not important. That they are not responsible for what the mooks do, nor accountable for the views held by the mooks who fight under their banners. And just this idea that we say, it doesn't matter what my fans say. Well, like, this is exactly what happened
goading them on.
With H3 and Keemstar, going at each other, being like, I'm not responsible, but you're wearing G Fuel. You're wearing G Fuel. You're wearing G Fuel. It's like, I didn't say that to call up his thing and get his sponsorship canceled.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a reasonable thing, which is we have to draw the line of, when are you to be held accountable for stuff somebody else says because you've incited them, and when is it like, I need to be able to talk about stuff without everybody going and shitting on whoever I did it.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting analysis of the dynamics of these internet beefs and how they keep people relevant, and how the whole point of the war is to keep the mooks like just constantly talking about you and going at it and fighting these other knights. And all that happens is you get rich until they take your sponsors away.
I was gonna say, yeah, YouTube beefs have real consequences now.
Now they do, which is 4-week-old news. So we'll leave it be. Anything else that you had?
Yeah, I got some stuff, but none of it is time sensitive. So let me know if you want to wrap or not. Our friend got gaslit. It's the first time I've ever had a friend get gaslit.
Oh, yeah.
Want to talk about that?
Sure.
Never experienced this before. Do you know the story? Do you remember it?
Dude, my brain is elsewhere, so you can retell it.
Well, I don't really remember it, honestly. So
okay.
It's a long time ago. Basically, what happened was our friend has a woman that he occasionally hooks up with, right? They're very casual. And she will blow him off most of the time. He tried to FaceTime with her during the Corona shutdown just to like say hi. He texts her and she doesn't respond. And then she hit him up for a booty call one night, right?
A literal WYD question mark at 7 or 8 p.m.
Yeah. So he's
after months of no communication.
Ignoring her, yeah. So
and one of the last times, one of the things that I remember, and I'm not saying that this friend is handled everything kindly or perfectly, but walked down to get her Uber after she was going to go home one night. Like, walked downstairs, got in the Uber, okay, bye. And she's like, didn't touch him, didn't kiss him, goodbye. I was like, bye. Like, ran away.
But then hits him up for sex.
And then hits him up and says that he's being weird.
Well, so she gives him the what you do in question mark,
yeah.
Right? So he's like, all right, yeah, come over, which I think is a bad call. But she comes over, they hook up, she hangs out afterwards and watch a movie. I think they get food maybe, or he calls her a car, whatever. It's like a very normal experience. And then afterwards, she hits him up and says,
the next day, yeah.
I don't like the way you treat me like shit after we have sex, which is fascinating because she regularly treats him like shit while he tries to treat her like someone who he's casually dating. Like, I'd say he tries to buy her food, tries to buy her.
Well, even aside, forget purchases or whatever. I mean, the question is, are you being clear in your intent and polite, kind, decent?
I just thought it was fascinating that after blowing him off for months,
yeah.
She then guilt trips him. And then he, being someone who I think wants to be a good person and simultaneously is insecure about himself, takes that straight to heart and just panics that somebody in the world thinks he's a bad guy. And it was really interesting because I'd never seen somebody get gaslit before. I've heard about it. I've heard people complain about it. But that was my first experience.
His initial reaction was like apologizing and trying to work things out. And what do you need? Like, give. And then we spoke and you spoke. I was like, look, I've seen some of these interactions. Some of them have occurred in public where she pretends not to see you as you walk in. You're like, hey, and then she acts like she can't see you. And then the whole thing gets really weird. Yeah. This is insane. Like, I'm a third party who has seen some of these interactions, though not all of them. It was just interesting to watch. It was
just fascinating, and I get it now more. Because you hear people get stuck in these relationships that are emotionally abusive, or they're dating a narcissist, or whatever it is, and they lose touch with reality. You go, how is that possible? And I just saw it. I went, oh, that's how it works.
There was in him what I saw was the most desire to make things right. So it's interesting. There's a personality that wants to make things right. And so a way to get increased attention from that person is to break something, you know, and to say, you broke this, now make it right. And this can happen with men and women. And I think it happens more frequently than it should. But yeah, they're like, oh, wow, this person is upset. Something is wrong. They're telling me that I've done it. And that's been solid feedback for most of my life. I've been, you know, when somebody's told me, hey, you're being a jerk, they've been close to the mark. So they must be right. And what's weird, like, he would have handled it without speaking to us. Very
well, that's what I was going to say.
differently.
So I did this video on 90 Day Fiance about toxic relationships and red flags. And one of the things I said is people will try to separate you from your friends. And it's very important you don't let them, because if he didn't have us to talk to, and also if he had hidden the relationship from us so that we hadn't seen what it actually looked like, she would have absolutely been able to write reality for him. You know what I mean? Just the way he works, being able to be manipulated by guilt very easily. He would have just bought in on whatever her reality was, because her frame was really strong, and because he's susceptible to that. So, like we said in the video, it's very important not to let your significant other separate you from your friends.
100%.
It's the number one way to protect yourself from being gaslit.
Yeah, and to the other thing that I think is difficult to do is, depending on your personality, you might make excuses for your significant other. You might, because you're unable emotionally to separate from them, you want to say, oh no, he didn't mean to hit me. You know what I mean? Like oh no, she
just
didn't.
Gets mad because he loves.
No, I actually was that, and you then become the lawyer for this person as opposed to the sharer of facts as best you can, and you start altering your friend's perception so that they feed you back. Okay, it sounds like everything's okay, which is not the case for that type of person. So yeah.
Speaking of 90 Day Fiance, I saw a lot of really cool. I knew writing that video that people would be watching it and pointing to their exes and going, "Oh, this is why they're bad," and I was good. I was shocked at the number of people who wrote in the comments and was like, "Oh wow, I just realized I'm toxic." Like, "Oh wow, I just realized I'm manipulative." And I thought that was really cool. That people were able to get through their ego and their self-defense mechanisms and learn that what they're doing is bad. I was actually very, very surprised by that, which was cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't have predicted too many of those.
But it was awesome. I was very happy and I don't know, proud of the people that follow us.
Yeah, good shit, man. You've been making a lot of videos. I just had my first little React one go up.
And it was so good that we might let it run for 2 weeks straight. There's nothing to do with the fact that I didn't make a video in time.
So yeah, all my other stuff is neither here nor there. Copyright, it seems out of left field.
Small.
So if you want to go to
let's go to questions, Justin.
Let's do it.
Yep.
All right, getting a lot of questions from Patreon.
All right,
nice.
Justin is buttering you guys up, and I will say thank you to all of our patrons. We are at the $600 mark. We get to do this once every 2 weeks. We have a ton to say, and we do it. If you guys want more episodes, I think at 900 we do it. But quite frankly, 600 is fine. Thank you to everybody. It means a ton. We love doing this. This is not for earning money, because we don't earn money. Justin earns some money, and we get to chat.
I earn money.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So my question for Ben and Charlie is this. I've been in a great relationship for a year now. I've never found a better match or a healthier relationship. Despite that, I still feel myself fantasizing about a potentially better partner. This frustrates me given how much I love my girlfriend. I think part of my angst comes from my being 23 and thinking I'm supposed to spend my 20s dating casually. If it helps, my girlfriend is 22. I try to remind myself how frustrating dating would be, because it would be hard to find someone who has all the positive traits my girlfriend does: beauty, intelligence, work ethic, agreeability, and maturity. And I've talked to her about my wondering what else is out there, and she told me she never does that. I like to think this is a sign that I'm the studliest dude out there, but there's probably a more realistic explanation. Regardless, it makes me feel bad that she doesn't seem to have these same fantasies. How should I deal with this? I would feel better if she also fantasized about other people, but she told me she wouldn't even leave me for Harry Styles.
First of all, I don't think you would. As someone who's done multiple open relationships, I don't think you would actually like it if she fantasized about other people, especially people in your life.
Well, she also might. So I have a couple layers of, there was a handful of questions in there, right? Which is, what should I do? How should I feel about my feelings? Let's start at the ones that I'm very, very confident in.
Marry her.
You're a sick person. No, the feeling guilty about the way one feels, if you've watched the first part of this podcast and not just this clip, it's a recipe for disaster. Feelings arise spontaneously. The wandering eye can arise spontaneously. Behaviors are a choice, but you do not want to clamp down on yourself at the level of feeling. There's nothing wrong with that. And if she has a different feeling, there's nothing wrong with that. And quite frankly, her feeling might change in 6 months or 2 years or 10 years if you guys get married, where she feels, oh my gosh, for the first time ever, I want Harry Styles. So I want to encourage you to embrace, not resist, not fight the fact that you feel that. It is not wrong. It does not make you a bad person. Nothing that arises spontaneously in you could make you bad, because there's no choice. I mean, bad requires a choice.
I actually think it's Esther Perel, but I could be wrong. But there's some relationship expert, and obviously be skeptical of all relationship experts, but someone who says that a lot of the issues in relationships come from this, in their mind, false belief that you shouldn't have a wandering eye, which is to say you shouldn't have wandering hands or wandering genitals, but that it's natural to, at some point in your relationship, be thinking about what would it be like if I were with someone else. And when you think that makes you a bad person, or when you think it makes your partner a bad person, according to this expert, that's what leads to a lot of problems in relationships. So just worth being wary of that.
Sure. So that's the first piece. And the second piece of what ought you do at, your age, whatever, does it matter? If you told me you were 43 or 23, it doesn't matter necessarily to me in this particular case. And what I would say is, what do you want? Yeah.
You're removing guilt.
I would sit down and ask yourself what drives you. This can be a very useful exercise to be like, what keeps me in this relationship? Is it love or fear? I heard some fear in there. I heard some fear of not finding someone else.
By the way, I had that exact fear with that at that exact age. I had a relationship when I was 23, and she was, in my opinion, beautiful, intelligent, sweet, and I thought to myself, if I break up with this woman, maybe I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that I did that. And I'm not saying that that's all I'll say is that that's fear. That's not love keeping me in the relationship in that moment.
Sure.
That's just being scared of regret.
So ask yourself and identify what's driving you right now. And the useful exercise is to go, okay, if I was driven by love, and that could be love of myself, that could be love of a future that I could have with someone else, it could be love of her. I mean, if I let myself move from a place of love, what decision would I make? And I just want to make clear, because I think the tendency is, I need to be with the person I'm in a relationship with. That is not the only way that love can express oneself. Love can be a recognition that I need to allow myself to have further experiences. Now, I don't want to push you too far that way.
I was going to say, so what feelings or thoughts or emotions or realizations would make you stay in a relationship in his position versus get out of a relationship in his position?
Well, the good news is you can ask yourself this question every week or you can constantly ask yourself this question. So the answer today, might be stay in the relationship, and also what it might be is, wow, I need to behave differently in this relationship. Like I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out with my behaviors and my attitude. I actually watched this with my brother. He did one of those centers that you go to and they do the things, and he realized, he's like, I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out of this relationship. I'm all in. And he went all in. And then a month later they broke up.
Yeah. Because he realized that it wasn't
he was like,
great as he thought.
I'm all in and this isn't great.
Yeah.
So that's an option too. But I would say, sit down. What emotion is love? And I do think, your intuition and your gut is a good guide in these kinds of situations where there's not like a wrong decision. Yeah. The only thing that you can do is make a decision for someone else. Yeah. So what you're trying to do is make the decision for yourself, not to please her or to please someone else or whatever. So that's like, find that intuition.
I had a mental exercise that I've found useful in some relationships, which is, like I said, I actually think having potential thoughts or dreams or whatever about someone else doesn't mean your relationship is necessarily broken or bad. That said, for me, one exercise I like to do is I go, if I could push a button and this person would just forget who I was, and we would be separated but with no resentment towards me, no anger towards me, and I would forget about them, would I push this button? Right? So now I don't have to worry about fear of
loss,
thinking about them and being sad and having a song come on and going, oh wow, this reminds me of her and now I'm sad. And I don't have to worry about feeling guilty either as I go off and have fun and this person is sad towards me. And what that exercise for me makes me realize is whether or not I am with the person just because of the joy and the positive of the relationship, or if fear and guilt are keeping me in.
Yep.
So that's I know I'm all about the mental exercises, Charlie's all about the emotional exercises, but I think to myself, yeah, if I had a button that would just make us both forget the other one ever existed, would I push it? Mm-hmm. And I've been in relationships where I'm like, oh yeah, that would be sick. Mm-hmm. And that makes me realize that what's keeping me in this relationship is not my love of being with the other person necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Cool. What else we got?
Next, I'm not sure if it's too late, but they said, I'm a 4th-year medical student, and this year we will be unable to travel to residency programs to interview in person. We will have one-on-one interviews as well as virtual social hours with multiple interviewees and current residents. So they were just wondering if you had any advice for virtual interviewing.
Virtual interviews? I have a handful. I mean, so watch our interview video. I think it's actually one of our lower viewed, better videos. I think it's really good. For virtual, just how to ace any interview or something. What would I add for virtual? I've only had 1 or 2. What I would advise is, this is very tactical, but like set up your station where you're going to record before. Feel comfortable with the background that's going to record. Mm-hmm. Put on the full work suit that you need, and it might not be a suit. It might be for your job. It might be something else. But like dress as if you were walking in to the interview, and don't not wear pants because they're not on the thing. Mm-hmm. And then the other stuff is going to be very similar, which is you're gonna prime yourself. You're gonna walk around like slap yourself, wake up, get in a little bit of more talkative mood. The only thing that I would potentially add for online interviews, and you know this from any sort of online conference call, is that you need to be more comfortable with space and silence because of that weird giving space to someone to speak online can take time. So you don't feel quite as rushed to be extroverted, outgoing, and joke cracky as you might have been if you were in person. You could slide jokes in a very understandable way because there's not that weird internet latency thing going on. Anything else?
No, I guess the only other thing I'd say, I think since it's impossible for people not to take looks into effect, I'd get good lighting as well. I think if you and another candidate are equal in every way, but that person just looks good on camera and you're a gray blob, you're going to lose.
Microphones are interesting, weirdly enough. I don't know if this is true of interviews, but certainly of YouTube videos. Your audio is, I want to be fair, so much more important than the quality of your video. I mean, the joke about PewDiePie recording on crap video is true, but you cannot skimp on audio because people will click off. So I don't know if that carries to interviews, but just something to consider. Cool. Anything else?
Yep. Hey guys, I had a question about finding purpose. I've been studying music composition in school for 4 years and have almost finished the degree. Although I really enjoy being a musician, after taking a moment to honestly question my motivation for composition specifically, I began to doubt my choice to pursue this. What are your guys' thoughts about finding motivation and meaning in your career choice? How do you know when it's time to double down on one thing or explore a different path? For context, I'm a 22-year-old male and live in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. So he was thinking of doing music composition. We don't know what he found, but he explored this and was like, this maybe isn't the most pure motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, on the whole, I'd say I'm more of a grinder and you're more of a passion pursuer. Mm-hmm. So I feel like your answer is going to be more illuminating. But I guess one thing I would say is when I was in investment banking, I thought I was going to love it because they sell you on it being challenging and intellectually stimulating, and you're going to love your coworkers. And I got in there and I hated it. Mm-hmm. Like I absolutely knew I hated it. So then we've talked about this all before, but I went through some mental exercises of what would my ideal day look like? What would I do with $100 million? What am I already doing in my free time / what do I pay money to do? And I wrote down and I brainstormed lists for each of those 3 things. Mm-hmm. And I looked for where it overlapped. And that's how I found my passion.
Yep. In addition to that, there's a video that I made way back in the day. It's got a different background that's about how to find your passion. And there's an additional number of questions that can help hone in on that. So check that out. The one thing that I would say is if you are 22 years old, I've seen that it often takes a bad work experience to catapult you into your passion. I don't really know many people who just went college passion. I know a lot of people who went college soul-sucking job that was like... Vroom.
Well, weirdly enough, our friend who's a music teacher might be the only
he's
one.
The only one. He's the only one that was like, no, I love music and I want to teach music and I love this.
I don't know if he wanted to be a teacher his whole life. Maybe he switched within music, but he's just... was 100% positive. He was all in on music from 9th grade.
Yeah.
And now he's a music teacher / band director. But he's the only one I can think of.
Yeah. So that to say that here your age is relevant. Take some of the pressure off. At 22, I went into something that was absolutely not my passion at all. I was like, oh, consulting, I'll learn about a lot of different industries. That's the garbage line that they feed you. I was a Microsoft Excel monkey, and I hated it. But that really made clear. I was like, oh, here's all the things that I don't like about certain work environments. And it helped me have some fire to move me towards something else. So check out the videos that we had in terms of orienting yourself with a carrot, but don't be afraid to go, this might be a stick job. This might be the job that chases me out of here towards something that I'm really excited about. So yeah, the other videos are sorry to make this so referential, but that's what I would recommend is check out those how to find your passion video.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, this is maybe the worst time for this advice, but it's okay to quit a job, right?
Yeah, we'll find out.
It's okay to go
this
to a
might
job.
Be terrible advice right
I'm
now.
just saying, I know a lot of people who are in their 30s and they're not on their first job. You know what I mean?
So I just wanted to comment here because one of the things that this book, The Fourth Turning, made me realize is that, of course, people can only give advice based on their own life experiences. And my life experiences is of growing up as the quote-unquote millennial that was well cared for as a child, that had a strong emotional and safe enough financial base, meaning that if stuff went wrong, I could flop on mom and dad's couch and know that there would be food in my belly. And all of the decisions I made flowed from that experience, which was not universal, but fairly widely held in middle-class America at around my time frame. I don't know what your generation will do. And I do know that generations almost always give shit advice to the next generation. So consider everything that I've said. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to be more hesitant now that I've read this book in terms of just recognizing like how particular everyone's situation is. And so, yeah, what did we do? We followed a passion, flew abroad, and it was great. It was wonderful. I hope it still works for a lot of people.
Advice in the 1930s.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah, exactly. I hope that works for everybody going forward, though. I don't know. We'll see. Anything else?
Yep. So for this person's question, they say, it seems to me that people want desire, as in they want to want something. For example, I have a friend who has let go of the desire for prestige and now feels lost because they don't have anything driving them. I'm trying to let go of my desire for romantic relationships, but I sometimes feel lost in a bit of a void without that desire driving me. It seems to me that most people try and move up the ladder of healthy desires, quote unquote, similar to the addiction ladder that you have talked about, but the optimal solution is to simply become comfortable with no desires at all. However, this seems almost impossible in modern society without moving to the middle of the mountain. Do you guys think this is achievable, or do you think it is more practical in modern society to just move up the desire ladder?
Good question, man. That's a deep understanding of what we've talked about. I don't know if you want to start.
I was going to say, as someone who desires wealth, a good dating relationship, and to be a master of my skills, perhaps I'm not the best person to answer this question.
So
you're desireless, Charlie. What do you?
Yeah, totally. So interestingly, what I hear in that question is a desire for no desire, which is of course in itself a desire. And this is the paradox of all of this stuff. As you drive into it, it's, I want to be free and to be enlightened. Well, it's your wanting to be enlightened that holds you back from enlightenment, weirdly enough. So I do both still. Is that the best way? I don't know. But on the one, I try to, what is it called? Transmute desires. And I try to take desires from something that is apparently more destructive or leads me down a less happy path, and I try to move it towards desires that I think will make me happier. But the other thing that I really think that the answer, as I get down to it, is understanding. And I don't mean conceptual understanding. I mean experiential understanding. So like, why do you, Ben, desire the things you desire? And I don't mean write them out. I mean feel them in their entirety. And in feeling something, in feeling any feeling, it shifts and changes and flows. And in stepping away from the feeling, letting it sit, not looking at it, but just moving in a direction, it ossifies and becomes this solid thing that stays constant in your life. And in trying to shift that thing to something else, like you said, the underlying desire just is still there. So what I am going to do, and what you can do, is to ask to speak to that part of yourself that wants something to change. And like be that and look at it and go, who are you, the part of you that wants to change? And then get into that part of yourself, take the deep breath and go, why? What is your role? Like, what is the goal of the change? Or is this something that, you know, and by experiencing it, I think you will, my experience has been that tends to change and move. But I'm not desireless, man. If I ever get there, I'll let you know. Yeah.
So my non-facetious answer. So this person, so they want to get rid of their desire for a relationship, right? Their desire for a dating relationship.
Yeah.
If you want to learn about how to get in good shape, how to be better with your dating relationships, I'm the guy that can help you with that. I'm not this person. I appreciate that you follow us and I like that you've asked us, but I would find someone who has gotten rid of their desire for a relationship and I would ask them. So I would study monks. If this is the most important thing in my life personally, I'd fly to a monastery, you know what I mean? Or I'd find a local monk, someone who has done it. And if I couldn't do that, I would find books by people who've done it.
There's a lot of those. There's a lot of those.
That's what I would do. If this was because I don't want to shed this yet, but that's what I'd say is go find someone who's done it and crushed it and ask them. And I would ask us what we've actually done well. Yeah. And I think that's what we should give advice on.
Cool.
Nice. The last one is that my girlfriend lives in a different country that is under strict lockdowns, but the neighboring country, Tanzania, has recently opened up for international travel. I want to go to the neighboring country and for her to come find me there. Now, because my home country has advised against all but necessary travel to all other countries, I will not be insured if anything should happen. This worries me a bit because the healthcare system is bad or expensive in the region I'm traveling to. I don't really fear COVID, but other regular things that are more common like traffic accidents, bacteria, infections, etc. It feels kind of weak that I could not, for a limited period of time, 1 month, put myself under the same risks that she basically faces every day. I want to see her so badly. Is it a risk worth taking? I would feel almost arrogant/snobbish, as if I am better than her if I did not go. How would you make a decision about this? P.S. I live in Europe and she is in East Africa.
Yeah.
She cannot go to him. Her government has banned travel.
Yep, strict lockdowns.
Got it. What's funny is you're like, I will lose insurance. It's like, welcome to America. You know what I mean? Like, if I get anything, there's no European backbone. But so what I would recommend is to recognize that, of course, people on the planet have different thresholds for risk, and yours, based on your background, is you have a lower threshold before you feel uncomfortable than she has just lived in, and that is a product of your experience. You're different people. You like each other because you're different. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a weak or a bad thing. How I would go about making this decision is to try to separate, in this case, my emotional discomfort from the practical reality. Because it sounds like what you're expressing is that there's this feeling which may or may not match the likelihood. So my mom, for instance, whenever I take a plane, is like, let me know when you land, but planes are safe. So that's sort of what I might ask myself.
You just look at the data. You go, what actually happens in this country?
What is the likelihood that something bad happens?
Also, how is your girlfriend going to get to you in Tunisia?
In Tanzania?
Or Tanzania?
I don't know. They're going to get to one another, whatever. So I in those regards, with regards to health, personally, and this is not an advice, I am pretty flippant and would probably give go. Doesn't mean you should.
Cool, I wouldn't. So there you go.
Yeah.
Two votes. Yeah. In opposite directions.
Yeah. I would. I'd be like, I'm gonna go. But yeah, it's totally up to you, and it doesn't make you a bad person.
I would listen to my intuition about my own safety. And
health. Doesn't make you good or bad either way. So sorry that we can't be of more help. It really comes down to your values and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Your risk tolerance, your intuition, what you value.
Cool.
That's it.
We're done. It's a pretty long one. Thanks, guys. Appreciate everybody on our patrons. Appreciate everyone who listened. This has been an interesting episode. If you want to contribute, we'll have Justin review some of the... Also, let's go to some of the comments in the comment section today.
Yeah, there were just a lot on Patreon.
Okay, got it.
That's the problem with the 14-day gap.
Yeah. Is that...
I got a comment. You want to do one that's from a non-patron?
Sure.
I found it on our Charisma on Command channel because I sometimes check the comments when I make videos, which I shouldn't do.
Sorry, guys. I found a giant piece of gum on my shoe. It's fucking gross.
Sick. Edit that out.
Don't edit it out. This is my life now.
Well, actually, there was two things I thought was interesting, but we'll talk about the other one next week. So this fan question was, I have some difficulty with my girlfriend not respecting my time and saying she will do something and not following through with her action, like you stated in your video. Do you have any suggestions we might be able to do to fix this problem, or should I just give up and find someone else? She is the first girl I have dated in my life. We've been dating for more than 3 years.
So sorry. What's the first piece that she's not doing? She's not following through?
The girlfriend does not respect his time, so she says she will do something and does not do it.
Got it.
So in the video, 90 Day Fiancé, I said one of the warning signs of a toxic relationship is when someone's words don't match their actions. So if someone promises you the moon, but then doesn't deliver it, says, I'll take care of you if money gets tight, and then money gets tight.
Yeah, it doesn't take care
and they're not there for you, right? I'd say that's something to watch out for.
Sure.
And so what this person is saying is that their girlfriend does not respect their time, and also she said she will do something and does not do it. So do you have any suggestions to fix this problem such that she will follow through when she says something? Or would you suggest to give up and find someone else?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple pieces. One is to sit down and ask yourself, is this a game deal breaker, right? So, because that's going to adjust what the no outcome is.
Yep.
Meaning, like, if you get a yes, great, I can give you some advice to get a yes, but there's always the possibility that you get no change.
Yep.
And so step one is be like, is this actually a deal breaker? Is this a nice to have or a need to have? That's up to you.
Yeah, that was my biggest piece of advice.
It's up to you. And you might realize that breaking up is not even on the table. Or you might realize that it is.
This person wouldn't change, though. The first thing to do is go, okay, what if I cannot accurately get this person to follow through on their word? And the rest of our relationship is them not respecting my time.
But being
and
the
not
way that
following
they
through.
are. Yeah.
And they'll continue to do the things that you like, whatever that is. Do you want to stay in that relationship or not?
Yeah. So whatever your answer is there, and then let's go, okay, so in order to influence them to change, I mean, let's start with the obvious. You could sit down and be like, hey, can I talk to you? One of the things when you're talking, I've mentioned this a million times, open them up, say this is a little bit weird to say, and that this helps people settle into this receptive mode as opposed to feeling jumped. And, I've been thinking about it, and one of the things, and just give that space, is that when you do X, I feel Y, right? And indisputable, you're not going to argue about the fact that she did this thing and what it makes you feel on the flip end.
And avoiding words like always and never.
Yeah.
So what your goal is to say something that cannot be refuted. Because then instead of getting an argument, you can address the behavior.
Yes. From there, she will probably not dispute this, might dispute your feeling, but quite frankly, neither are arguable because
right. I have done this and I do feel this way.
Yes. And you can discuss it. And what you're saying is, could you, in place of that, do this very specific thing instead? And the answer is not respect my time. Because like, what does that mean? I respect your time. I just 30 minutes late, but I've been respecting it,
Yeah.
So
not out of disrespect. I just got busy. I was on the phone.
So when you say 5 o'clock, can you be in the car no later than 5:05? Like check this box, yes or no. This is very understandable. You guys have the same thing. So we're not speaking about feelings here. We're speaking about concrete, verifiable behaviors. And to request that, and you will both know if this thing has been delivered upon in the future. If it's not, this conversation could be had again, and you can decide at that point if this is a deal breaker or not. And then if you decide it's a deal breaker, break the deal and break up. And if you decide that it's not, accept that this person is as they are. Is that even a sentence?
I think you did.
They are as they is as they are. It doesn't matter.
They are as they are.
They are as they are. Who cares? Accept them and live your life accordingly, which is to say that there will be times, and this actually might change the behavior, where you accept that they are no longer going to be available at 5 o'clock, but at 5:30, and you have to be somewhere at 5, and you say, hey, I'm going, but you're not invited because you don't show up on time. And it doesn't need to be like, it is not
vindictive.
It's not vindictive.
It's just vindictive.
It's just you've shown me that this is your pattern of behavior, and that doesn't fit into what needs to happen today.
Yeah.
And then just live as if that's the person that they are, and accept that about them. And don't try to secretly change or cajole or any of that stuff. Just make the adjustment that you need to make in order to not have it negatively impact your life or minimize the negative impact it has.
I think that's great. I think you nailed it. And the only thing I would add is on your part, to not do anything vindictive or passive aggressive, right? So we've talked about you actually go and sit down with them, and then afterwards you either have a behavior change, or if not, you accept the behavior change. But what you don't do is pretend you're accepting the behavior change, but make contemptful, snide remarks about the behavior you still don't like, right? You have to truly accept that they are this way or break up with them. That's the only thing I would add.
Cool. Did it. Podcast over. Thank you, everybody. We love you. Stay safe out there. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Peace.